Did you think getting fit after 30 was going to be easy? This year, I turned 33, and these are the 33 fitness truths I wish someone had told me when I got started to get results faster. I've spent 28 plus years in the fitness and martial arts worlds, trained hundreds of students and made every mistake possible, and now I've distilled the most powerful lessons into this video. These are the exact principles that help my students and me transform our bodies after years of frustration. Best part, none of this requires more time in the gym, expensive equipment, or extreme diets. In fact, many of these principles will have you training less, but getting better results. So if you're tired of putting in the work without seeing the results you deserve, this might be the most important fitness video you'll ever watch. And if you want my free training on the 30 steps to get lean, energized, and disciplined naturally, then check the link in the description. Lesson 1. When I first started training seriously, I was obsessed with pushing harder than anyone else in the room. I wore my constant soreness like a badge of honor, and sleep I thought was for the weak. Recovery was an afterthought. And then when I turned 33, everything crashed. Despite training more than ever, I wasn't getting the results I had before. I was also about to have my third child, and we all co-sleep together in one big bed, which is great for the kids, but it's definitely tough on sleep. And the turning point came when I realized how stressed, tight, and sore my body was from the lack of sleep and recovery. So I doubled down on recovery, especially myofascial release, aka self-massage, which we'll cover shortly, body brushing, managing artificial blue light, improving my posture, and more. And within 2 weeks, I felt a huge difference. Lifting weights no longer felt like a chore. I was sleeping deeper and watched my performance increase. The lesson is clear. Recovery is not passive. It's an active process, and it deserves as much attention as your workout. Schedule, track it, and protect it for consistent progress. Lesson 2. For years, I was the know-it-all fitness guy. I'd read the research, tried all the programs, and continuously experimented. This research-backed approach had me constantly defending my methods rather than reflecting on the actual results. And everything changed when I got really sick. After 8 years of being vegan, before it was a trend, I was bedbound, red raw with bleeding eczema, had gut issues, and using B12 injections just to feel somewhat normal. I was backed into a corner and forced to adopt the white belt mentality again. The moment I ate meat again, it was like a surge of energy rushed through my body, my life force had returned, and my libido went right up too. So be open to being wrong and approach fitness with the white belt mindset. Ask questions instead of making statements. And the moment you think you know everything is the moment your progress stops. Lesson 3. I used to spend hours in the gym doing isolated movements that had zero application to real life. My body looked strong, but I was constantly dealing with imbalances, aches, and pains. While studying anthropology, I became fascinated with how our ancestors moved and trained. They didn't just sit there doing bicep curls, yet they were functional, powerful, and extremely athletic. And this idea and insight made me completely rethink my approach to fitness. I redesigned my training around natural human movements, namely standing, walking, running, and throwing. And within months, I looked better, my pain disappeared, and I started moving effortlessly again. Focus on movement patterns that have served humans for thousands of generations. Your body is designed to move in certain ways. So honor that design and watch your results multiply. Lesson 4. When I was a kid, I was fed the lies about the sun damage. Meanwhile, I was spending hundreds on supplements trying to fix my low energy and poor sleep. And one day, I was watching a video on our relationship with natural and artificial light by Dr. Jack Kruse, a neurosurgeon and optimal health educator. He was talking about boosting our mitochondrial function simply by just getting more sun.
What is your red blood cell effectively? It's a wireless communication device that connects you from the sun to your mitochondria.
And it suddenly clicked. Most of us are deficient in vitamin D, and it's involved in over 200 biochemical reactions in the body, from testosterone production to protein synthesis. So I started with a simple change. 10 minutes of direct sun exposure, no sunscreen, early in the morning, and then extra sun just whenever I could. Within 3 weeks, my sleep quality improved dramatically, my recovery between sessions accelerated, and my testosterone felt higher than ever. So get the 15 to 20 plus minutes of direct sunlight daily. Lesson 5. I used to think willpower was everything in fitness. If I couldn't stick to my nutrition, my training plan, or another habit, it was just a personal failure of mine. The breakthrough came after studying the lifestyles of philosophers and famous martial artists who knew we become our environment. I completely redesigned my physical space. I removed all junk food from the house, set up a small workout area in my living room, blocked blue light in the evening, and found workout partners who shared my goals. Almost immediately, my consistency improved because I wasn't fighting my environment anymore. Engineer your environment to make healthy living automatic. Remove friction from positive behaviors and add friction to negative ones. The environment always wins against willpower in the long run. Lesson 6. At first, grounding, which is just putting your bare feet on natural ground, can sound like pseudo-scientific nonsense. So after a particularly nasty bout of eczema that it just wouldn't heal, I tried 20 minutes of barefoot time outdoors in the morning. I was honestly shocked when my inflammation just dropped massively, and my sleep quality became much deeper too. So I dug into the research and I found evidence supporting both practices. Morning sunlight and skin contact with the earth have measurable effects on circadian rhythms, cortisol patterns, and inflammatory cytokines. So spend 15 to 20 minutes or more barefoot outside each morning, preferably in sunlight, and dramatically reduce artificial light exposure after sunset, especially blue and white light. You'll see your recovery improve, inflammation will decrease, and your hormonal environment will optimize. Lesson 7. I spent my first decade in fitness chasing mirror muscles, chest, arms, abs, while neglecting everything else. I looked strong, but I developed serious imbalances that led to injuries. The wake-up call came when my punching and my kicking speed dropped dramatically. There were guys I was sparring, I was previously beating them with ease, and instead I found myself slow, stiff, and even getting hit by their strikes more, even though I looked fit. So I was working with a functional movement specialist, and I discovered I had severe imbalances in fundamental movement patterns due to this vanity-focused training. So I rebuilt my approach around movement quality rather than appearance. I focused on fixing asymmetries, building balanced strength, and improving posture. And ironically, once I stopped training for looks, my physique improved more than ever because I could train more consistently without injuries. So train for function first, and aesthetics will follow. Focus on movement quality over muscle isolation. When you build a balanced functional body, you also build a physique that looks good because it's functioning as it should. Lesson 8. I spent years categorizing my training by body parts: chest day, back day, leg day. While this approach is popular, I noticed I was still struggling with everyday activities despite getting stronger in isolated movements. I observed the best martial artists and athletes train movement patterns, not just muscles. So when I finally switched to organizing my training around standing, walking, running, and throwing mechanics and patterns, everything changed. My functional strength improved and nagging pains disappeared. Suddenly I could do a day of labor or work without getting sore, play with my kids without getting winded, and engage in spontaneous physical activities without fear of injury. My body became usable, not just showable. Focus your training on the 4 fundamental movement patterns: standing, walking, running, and throwing. Build your program around getting stronger and more efficient in these patterns, and you'll build a body that performs as good as it looks. Lesson 9. For years, I followed bodybuilding splits, CrossFit, yoga, cycling, calisthenics, and more. I defended these methods religiously, despite average results and constant burnout. After an injury caused by overtraining left me out of training for 2 weeks, I got brutally honest about my results. I asked myself, if these methods work so well, why am I constantly injured, tired, and plateauing? So I made a bold decision to abandon everything that wasn't giving me clear results. I dropped traditional bodybuilding splits for full body training, replaced yoga with myofascial release, long cardio with shadow boxing and sprints, and cut my volume of training by 50%. My results over the next 3 months exceeded the previous 2 years. So be ruthless about abandoning methods that aren't working, regardless of their popularity. Training approaches that leave you constantly sore, tired, or injured are failed approaches no matter how many people swear by them. Judge methods by results, not traditions. Lesson 10. I used to think massage therapy was just a luxury, nice to have but not essential. I pushed through tightness and minor pains assuming they would just resolve on their own. At 21, I developed such severe shoulder impingement from accumulated tightness that I couldn't relax when lying in bed. After just 3 weeks of self-massage work with simple tools, just a lacrosse ball and a peanut roller, mobility I hadn't had in ages returned. So invest 15+ minutes daily on targeted myofascial release. Focus on the hip areas first, then chronically tight areas before they become a problem. Lesson 11. I spent years getting stronger in the sagittal plane, which is forward and backward movements, while completely neglecting rotational and lateral training. I could bench press and deadlift impressive weights for my size, but had embarrassingly weak rotational strength. This blind spot became obvious when I threw out my back by reaching just into the back seat of my car. I realized I had underdeveloped rotational capacity despite my otherwise strong appearance. I added deliberate rotational training, movements including medicine ball throws, cable wood chops, rotational split squats, And within months, not only did my back pain resolve, but my strength and performance improved because my core could now transfer force through my body more effectively into all planes of movement. So base your training around rotational strength movements immediately. Your spine will thank you as you age too. If you're already seeing how these principles could transform your approach, make sure you grab my free training on the 30 steps to get lean, energized, and disciplined naturally. Just click the link in the description. Lesson 12. For the first 12 years of my training life, I pretty much just did kickboxing, bodyweight circuits, and other sports. I thought that this kind of training was the ultimate form of physical development. I judged fitness almost exclusively by whether or not it had a practical use, like fighting or how fast you were. So around 16, I decided to start doing weightlifting, mainly just to get stronger. But what happened next humbled me completely. Despite being fast and being able to fight, I was weak with lifting weights. So as I continued training in weightlifting, I realized I'd been taking the wrong approach. I realized that there was actually a middle path, one which involved practicing martial arts and functional strength training as the optimal training methods. Once I committed to this path, I took the best from both worlds, and my body became more resilient, my reflexes sharper, and I developed a mind-body connection that transformed my martial arts training as well. So add some form of martial arts to your fitness regimen. You don't need to become a fighter. Even just one session weekly of kickboxing that you can do at home will develop physical and mental qualities that traditional gym training simply just cannot touch. Lesson 13. There were times where I approached my workouts too casually. I was just going through the motions, checking my phone between sets, never really pushing beyond my comfort zone. While watching elite martial artists prepare for training, I noticed something I had dropped the ball on: controlled aggression. They transformed their mental state before training sessions, channeling intensity that you could feel. So learn to channel aggression strategically. This isn't about being angry or reckless. It's actually about summoning the appropriate energy for challenging tasks. Lesson 14. Early in my fitness journey, I approached it as a purely physical endeavor. I thought results came exclusively from the program, diet, and recovery protocols. Meanwhile, I'd constantly sabotage myself through negative self-talk, inconsistency, and abandoning plans prematurely. The breakthrough came when a coach had me keep a journal of my thoughts during training and recovery. I was constantly undermining myself with thoughts like, this is too hard, or I don't have the genetics, and I couldn't do this. I worked on my mental approach, treating it as seriously as my physical training. So you must train your mind with the same deliberate practice you apply to your body. Develop specific strategies for overcoming mental barriers. Your thoughts create your reality in fitness, so directing your effort, consistency, and ultimately your results. Lesson 15. I used to dismiss traditional training wisdom as outdated and unscientific. I wanted the latest evidence-based protocols and scientific studies. Whilst training with my Wing Chun Sifu, whose training methods hadn't actually changed significantly since I last saw him, however, his knowledge increased massively. What struck me was how this 65-year-old man moves with more grace, power, and resilience than most 30-year-olds I knew. I began studying more traditional training systems from various cultures: Indian wrestlers, Okinawan karate masters, Chinese martial artists, and I incorporated their time-tested approaches to movement, lifestyle, and longevity. My chronic injuries began healing, my movement quality improved, and I developed a sustainable approach to fitness that didn't leave me burned out. So look to traditional training systems that have stood the test of time. Practices that have survived centuries often contain profound wisdom that many modern approaches miss. The most sustainable approaches to fitness aren't fads, they're principles that have worked for generations. Lesson 16. I used to wait for scientific validation before trying new training approaches. Then I worked with a coach who encouraged methodical self-experimentation. He taught me how to structure personal tests, control variables, and measure outcomes objectively. Become your own human experiment. Learn basic principles of self-experimentation, isolating variables, measuring meaningful outcomes, and giving changes sufficient time. Your personal response to training stimuli matters more than studies that may not represent your specific situation. Lesson 17. I used to think my perfectionism was an asset in fitness. I'd create elaborate programs, meal plans, and recovery protocols, then abandon them when I couldn't execute them perfectly. I'd miss one workout and decide the whole week was off to a bad start. And this pattern became painfully obvious when I compared my results to more laid-back training partners. They were outpacing me simply because their consistency over time trumped my sporadic perfectionism. So I adopted a good enough approach, focusing on adherence rather than pure optimization. So aim for more than 85% consistency rather than 100% perfection. Perfectionism is often fear in disguise: fear of inadequacy, fear of wasted effort, fear of judgment. And when you release the need for perfect execution, you enable the consistency that actually delivers results. Lesson 18. For years, I believed my circumstances were uniquely challenging. I had legitimate reasons why I couldn't train consistently, eat properly, or recover adequately. The wake-up call came when I had my first son, and I couldn't lie to him about why I didn't stick to my goals and habits. I couldn't avoid my excuses any longer, as I had someone who depended on me to lead by example. I started a brutal exercise, analyzing every excuse I made, then asking, is this really true? Audit your excuses ruthlessly. Ask yourself, is this a genuine obstacle or a justification? Focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do. Lesson 19. The more I coached students dealing with their vices, the more I had to face my own. I'd crush my workouts, but destroy my recovery with being on my phone before bed. I stopped trying to appear perfect and got honest about my challenges. Identify your secret killers, those private habits inconsistent with your goals. The behaviors you're most reluctant to discuss are often the ones holding you back the most. Lesson 20. I used to train intensely for months, then take a few weeks off during busy work periods. I started to track my performance before and after breaks. A 2-week break typically costs 4 to 6 weeks of progress. The mental momentum lost was even more costly than the physical downfall. So I started a never miss 2 training days rule. Even when I'm short on time or recovering from illness, I'll do at least 15 minutes of light training. Set non-negotiable rules that you follow even during the toughest times. Consistency isn't about perfection, it's about keeping up your momentum. Lesson 21. I used to spend my money wrong to get results, buying supplements, workout clothes, and gym memberships while trying to save money on coaching and high quality food. I then switched from spending to investing. I invested in working with a knowledgeable coach and prioritized quality organic food sources. And I cut out all supplements except a few which I knew worked. And the ROI was great. The knowledge gained from proper coaching created years of better training decisions. And the focus on food quality instead of supplements delivered tangible improvements in performance and recovery. So invest your cash where it creates lasting value. Education, coaching, and high quality nutrition. Lesson 22. I'd see a new training style and abandon what I was doing just to try it. I'd been training for years, but kept switching programs, never allowing my body more than 2 months to fully adapt to any training stimulus. And I got fed up with the constant stop-start mentality, and I committed to a simple program for 6 full months. Now the first 2 months showed modest results, but months 3 through 6 delivered more progress than I'd seen in years of program hopping. Commit to proven programs for at least 3 to 6 months. Program hopping is not optimization, it's self-sabotage, impatience, and unrealistic expectations. Lesson 23. I used to track everything: weight, body fat percentage, circumference measurements, calories, macros, and dozens of gym performance metrics. And this data overload took time away from more productive tasks. After consulting with some elite athlete coaches, I was surprised by their minimalist approach to tracking. They focused on just a small handful of leading indicators that predicted progress. With their guidance, these are the 5 key metrics I follow. 1 is sleep quality, subjective recovery rating, performance in foundational exercises, posture photos, and weekly workout adherence. To identify the smaller set of metrics that reliably predict your progress include recovery quality, nutrition consistency, performance in fundamental movements, training adherence, weight and body fat percentage. Everything else is just noise. Lesson 24. I've spent thousands of pounds on supplements promising everything from enhanced muscle growth to enhanced recovery. My monthly bill sometimes exceeded my food budget. Everything changed when I discovered that most products, even those with some evidence, typically produced effects so small they were barely measurable in controlled settings. So I eliminated all supplements except those with substantial evidence and noticeable personal effects. To use supplements, as their name suggests, to supplement a solid foundation, not replace it. The vast majority produce effects so marginal that they're not worth the cost. Focus your resources on the fundamentals that deliver 95% of results. Lesson 25. I used to pride myself on multitasking during training, answering emails between sets, scrolling social media during rest periods. I thought it was being efficient by combining productivity with fitness. My wake-up call came when I accidentally left my phone at home one day and had my best workout in months. The difference in focus, intensity, and mind muscle connection was dramatic. My phone-free sessions were 20 to 30% shorter and more effective. Create a mandatory phone distraction-free policy during your training sessions. No emails, text messages, or social media. Only tracking that session's data if needed. The constant context switching disrupts the mind-muscle connection, Your nervous system needs focused attention to create optimal adaptations. Lesson 26. I used to approach fitness as something I did rather than something I was. I would say, I'm trying to get fit, or I'm training more these days. When I started changing my language and identity statements to, I prioritize nutrition and I train every day, I eliminated decision fatigue. These actions became automatic rather than hard choices. So focus on identity level changes rather than behavior modifications. Ask yourself, what would someone who values health do in this situation, rather than, or should I work out today? Lesson 27. I spent years in the I'll start tomorrow cycle. Monday was always the perfect day to begin. The pattern became painfully clear. If I had actually started tomorrow, I would have accumulated hundreds of additional workouts over the years. So I adopted a do something today mentality. The idea that doing a few things, even if small, to benefit my mind, body, and spirit was better than not doing anything at all. Starting perfectly today rather than perfectly tomorrow. Remember, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Lesson 28. Motivation and willpower were the tools I used to maintain my fitness routine. When I felt motivated, I'd train intensely and eat perfectly. When motivation inevitably faded, my consistency would collapse. The game changer was learning about the power of rituals and environmental design from behavioral scientists. I created structured routines that triggered automatic behaviors, training clothes laid out the night before, meal prep systems that happened on autopilot, and environmental cues that prompted the desired actions. Motivation didn't matter. I still had days, when I didn't feel like training, but my rituals carried me through those periods until motivation naturally returned. Build systems that make consistency automatic. Create environmental triggers that prompt desired behaviors. Develop rituals that don't require decision-making. Motivation is a finite and fluctuating resource. Design your life so it's not required for daily consistency. Lesson 29. In the modern fitness world, I bought into the common wisdom that abs are made in the kitchen, and weight management was 80% diet and 20% exercise. I obsessed over nutritional perfection while viewing training as secondary. Working with fighters and observing their off-season protocols changed my perspective. The most successful fighters prioritize progressive training above all else, viewing nutrition primarily as recovery fuel for their workouts rather than the main driver of results. So I reversed my approach, making training quality my non-negotiable priority and viewing nutrition as support for recovery and performance. This training-first hierarchy made nutrition decisions easier. They were now based on performance outcomes rather than abstract rules. Prioritize consistent, progressive training as your foundation. Nutrition does matter enormously, but its primary purpose is supporting your training performance and recovery. When you nail your training, nutrition decisions become clearer and more intuitive because they're tied to tangible performance outcomes. Lesson 30. For years, I trained alone, believing it made me more focused, dedicated, and disciplined. In reality, I was often inconsistent, skipped challenging exercises, and cut workouts short when they got uncomfortable. The turning point came when I reluctantly joined martial arts class again, led by a coach who demanded excellence. I discovered that external accountability enhanced my discipline. Having people who expected me to show up and put in quality work created positive pressure, especially on those days when my internal motivation was low. Create accountability structures that match your personality. It might be a training partner, a coach, or a committed group. Lesson 31. My ego used to drive my training decisions. I choose exercise I was good at, weights that looked impressive, and routines that showcased my strengths while avoiding my weaknesses. I'd rarely ask for help, viewing it as a sign of inadequacy. In training, I one day tore my MCL and dislocated my kneecap in one training session, and had to pop it back in place, and I had to rebuild my foundation with basic movements and light weights for months. Once I let go of my need to impress others or myself, my progress accelerated dramatically. I willingly tackled my weakest movements, asked countless questions, and prioritized long-term development over short-term ego gratification. Identify where ego is dictating your exercises and your decisions. The fastest progress often requires temporarily setting ego aside to build a proper foundation. Lesson 32. I spent years chasing complex, advanced training techniques, intricate periodization schemes, and complicated protocols. I realized I'd lost my attention on the finer and the right details. I ignored the usual cues I would follow to make the exercise work and just jumped straight into performing it. I stripped my approach down to the fundamentals: basic whole body movements and progressive overload. I focused on perfecting execution rather than adding complexity. My results, they improved dramatically despite the seemingly beginner approach. Focus on mastering fundamentals rather than chasing complexity. The basics work for beginners and elite athletes alike. The difference is in the execution quality, consistency, and attention to detail. When in doubt, simplify rather than complicate. And the last lesson, number 33, I used to view fitness failures as evidence of personal inadequacy. Studying the paths of successful athletes and fighters revealed a completely different relationship with failure. They view setbacks as valuable data, not personal moral failings. Every failure provided information that refined their approach, making eventual success more likely. Reframe failures as essential feedback in a feedback loop. Success is not a linear path. It emerges from a series of adjusted approaches based on learned lessons. The people who succeed aren't those who never fail. They're those who use failure as a refining tool rather than a reason to quit. If you're ready to get lean now, click the link below to learn about my program, The Modern Warrior Transformation, where I guarantee to get you lean, energized, and disciplined, or your money back. And that is it for 33 fitness truths I know at 33 that I wish I knew at 23. And if you found this helpful, check out this video right here. It's the perfect next step to help you fight the dad bod.